Hello, dear friend. In this video, we will talk about the most popular challenging aspects, the square and the opposition. We will discuss some myths and legends about those aspects and how you can use them into your advantage. First of all, very quick reminder, what does an aspect mean? Aspect is a concrete distance between two planets, which is measured in degrees. And each aspect has a different influence, a different impact. There are aspects which are considered to be harmonious and supportive, and others which are considered to be challenging and difficult, or in the old books, they also call them negative aspects. There are also creative, karmic aspects, major, minor aspects. So there are different classifications. But one of the most popular aspects are the square and the opposition, the major challenging aspects. And I want to talk more about those two aspects because there is lots of confusion, and also I see many people who are afraid of those aspects. So first of all, how much are those aspects, or how many degrees do they include? The square is a 90-degree aspect. The opposition is 180-degree aspect. And even though they are both challenging, both major aspects, their influence is not the same. So this is also something we will clarify. What's the actual difference between those two aspects? First of all, what do we need in order to have an aspect? We need two planets. So it's always important to pay attention to the nature of the planets. Are they typically friends or not? For example, Mars and the Sun are friends. Mars and Jupiter are friends because they are both masculine and fire planets. On the other side, Venus and Mars are not really friends, even though they share something similar about passion, about relationships, but they are completely different. Also, Mars and Saturn, really different. Mars and Neptune, Saturn and Neptune. So this is the first thing you need to consider when you are interpreting an aspect. What's the nature of those planets? And if you find something similar, if you find something close or common in their nature, this is an easier combination for positive or for challenging aspect in both cases. And obviously the opposite is true as well. If the nature is really different, it's difficult for those two planets to work harmoniously together. So this is kind of a general pre-rule for interpretation of every aspect. And specifically, what can we say about the challenging aspects, both for the square and the opposition? The common thing is that those aspects require something from us, some kind of effort or more awareness or some kind of change. And the two planets are communicating, but the communication is not smooth. There's either a conflict between them, or one of them is suppressing the other one. And there could be some blockages, or of course, it really depends on the specific planets which are included. But the overall principle is that they bring tension. Another important thing, however, is that this tension is also a great source of energy. This is the most important, that especially in the more negative interpretations, they forget. Because if you have a positive aspect, let's say a positive aspect between Mars and Uranus, you have harmonious connection. So the energy is flowing. You can have really fast reactions. You can be really creative or find different solutions. So the energy is flowing harmoniously and the two planets are working as a team. What would happen if we have the challenging aspect, if we have the square between Mars and Uranus? First of all, what happens is that the potential is stronger. The potential for innovations, for creativity, for doing something different is much higher. There is much more energy, drive, intensity in those challenging aspects. The difference, I'm not saying that, it's only positive. Obviously, it's not. The difference is that with the challenging aspects, things are not so consistent. And there might be some ups and downs in certain times or moments or periods. You might be really innovative, really creative, very inspired, very fast, but this level may drop. So it's fluctuating. The peaks are higher of the average level of the positive aspect. So the potential is higher, but it's not so consistent. And also, most importantly, it requires effort. So when you see a challenging aspect, I would like to encourage you to interpret that as a higher potential, higher possibility through personal effort and work actually to achieve more. And this even reminds me of something my teacher used to tell us a lot about the aspects between Saturn and Jupiter, the two social planets, which are very important when it comes to social realization, social success. He used to say that the most successful people are those with challenging aspects between Jupiter and Saturn. Not those with sextiles and trines, but those with squares and oppositions. And the reason is absolutely the same, because this aspect brings more drive. Yes, of course, there is some kind of frustration. That's a common thing for the challenging aspects, but this frustration is inspiring you or pushing you or motivating you to do more, to change, to put more energy into whatever you want to do. So my recommendation again is always look at your challenging aspects as opportunities for growth, because that's what they really are. And that applies also to transits and progressions and solar arc directions and basically every other astrology predictive method. If you have squares and oppositions in the transits, yes, of course, you might be provoked, there might be some difficulties, but those are your real opportunities for growth and for change. Drastic, important life changes happen on challenging aspects. Don't forget that. And that's why, again, I want to inspire you. I want to encourage you to look at them with a different eye. Okay, and now let's actually clarify. Okay, we talk about square opposition. Are they really the same? The answer is no, they are not identical. The square is 90 degrees, the opposition is 180 degrees. What's the difference? First of all, the square is an aspect which requires effort and action. It requires overcoming something, fighting with something external, internal, it depends. But it's about movement, it's about action, it's about effort. That applies both to your personal birth chart and also in prediction. If you have squares in the transits, in progressions, you need to put some effort. You need to work harder or just invest more of your energy into whatever you are doing. On the other side, the opposition requires something different. The opposition requires awareness. The opposition requires from us to see things clearly and also to find the balance. The oppositions are typically in signs which are also symbolically in an opposition. And signs which are in opposition, for example, let's say Taurus and Scorpio. Signs which are in opposition, even though they seem completely different, they have something in common. They represent the same theme, but from a different perspective. It's like the two sides of the coin, but it's the same coin. Absolutely the same principle applies to the axis in astrology. There is even one saying that we don't have 12 signs in the zodiac. We have 6 signs, each having 2 variations. So that's a very interesting point of view. It's definitely very meaningful because of that, because those signs which are in opposition share something in common. There is a common theme. And if you have an opposition as an aspect in your chart or in prediction, it means that you need to find the balance in this particular area, in this common area, balancing the two polarities, the two different sides. And usually it's more about awareness, and it's more about, processing that, seeing that, realizing that. Not so much about fighting or working extremely hard, or it's just a different type of energy. In some cases, of course, it really depends on our temper, on our personality, but the oppositions for some people might be even harder than the squares, especially if you're someone who is not afraid of work and effort, just, give it to me. But when it comes to stillness and realizing things and evaluating things, for some people this might be annoying or meaningless or whatever. So oppositions sometimes might be more challenging because of that. And another principle and another difference between the two aspects is that typically the opposition lasts longer. There is one principle when it comes to aspect interpretation, which says this: the longer the aspect, the aspect is, the longer the influence is. By longer aspect, I mean a higher number of degrees. So obviously 180 is more than 90. So the higher number of degrees, the longer the aspect is. And 180 is really the highest possible number of aspect, possible degrees. And usually those aspects in the birth chart specifically, they create more or less like lifetime situations, something that you need to balance on and off through your whole life. On the other side, with the squares, depending of course on every specific case, but generally they tend to be shorter. They don't affect you like all of the time. Of course, each chart should be interpreted individually, but that's just as an idea to consider, that oppositions tend to define a very long-lasting theme in your life. But in every case, again, I want to remind you not to be afraid of the challenging aspects. And another thing I want to add also is that in the charts of famous people, we typically find many challenging aspects. And the reason is because those are the aspects that give you energy, give you ambition, motivation, drive, strength to compete or to fight or to resist or to overcome, not to give up. And eventually, those are the people that succeed more. That's relevant both to the material, practical life, but even in the spiritual world, that spiritual practices, spiritual growth, It's not about easiness, it's about growth, and growth usually requires effort. Even in the spiritual practices, we have effort. So I want you to look at your chart, your challenging aspects, and to be thankful for having them. They may provoke you, they may test you, they may put you in many difficult situations, but they are also your greatest asset, your greatest potential to grow, to achieve more, to move forward, to make changes, and not to give up. And I find that, again, those are the more successful people. It's not easy, it's not simple, especially internally and emotionally. This may create some stress, but again, this is the energy that if we use in the right direction, it will take us forward. So that's the general idea, the general interpretation and meaning of squares and oppositions, and how you can take your minuses and turn them into pluses. If you want to learn more about astrology, I have a free webinar on psychological astrology, how you can create a psychological profile with astrology completely free. The link is below the video. And if you're interested to go even deeper, you can sign up for the waitlist for Mars Stars Astrology Academy, the most advanced astrology training I offer, which will take you to a totally different level. Thank you so much for joining me. Again, look at your squares and oppositions and use them properly. Take care.